Most people have no idea what 7-OH actually is. And now RFK Jr. wants it classified as a Schedule 1 controlled substance. So on the surface, that sounds like bad news for the kratom community, but here's the twist. 7-OH is not kratom. In fact, it could be extremely dangerous. And this move finally forces people to see the difference, especially including the media. So today we're going to break down the pros, the cons, and the myths about 7-OH and kratom so you can finally understand what's actually going on. All right, everyone. I am Charles. I am the co-host of Kava and Kettlebells.
Hi, guys. My name is Heidi. I'm this guy's wife and the other co-host of Kava and Kettlebells. Apologize in advance for my voice. The allergy game is strong right now here in Southwest Florida, so bear with me. But we think this is an important episode. This is all happening very recently, so we really wanted to kind of get this information out there for you guys. So what exactly is happening right now? Has it been classified? Has it not? Like, what's going on? I think people are a little confused. But the answer is no, it has not officially been classified. This was just a recommendation, so a federal recommendation by RFK Jr. And now it's in the hands of the DEA basically now. So they're going to be able to make that decision. They're going to do their research, get their information from their experts, big giant quotation marks around that. And they will, make their decision. And then, of course, it'll go through all the steps, the appeals, all that stuff until it is finalized. So this is not finalized yet. This is just a recommendation.
Yeah. And also, this is us speculating on what we're seeing, what we have seen in the community, and some of our kind of just overall thoughts about it. So I do just want to back up a tad. All right. So 7-OH. What is 7-OH? So all kratom will have a small naturally occurring piece of 7-OH in it, right? It is a segment of the alkaloid that's present in the kratom plant. But depending on the manufacturer, depending on the lab test and the product, most of the times, like for example, we just got a lab test that we saw from Millie, Drink Millie beverages. We actually have a review up on them. It is a kratom, kava, and then adaptogen seltzer. Their lab test came back with, I think it was like 0.0001% of 7-OH. So essentially the lab test said non-existent, like it was almost negative, right? Because there was so little in it. But here's the issue. Over, I would say, probably the last 2 years, been seeing 7-OH become really, really popular, especially in gas stations and smoke shops. You don't see it in kava bars. In fact,
well, there are some kava bars that
some do.
It's not common though, and there has been speculation that there have been products in the past that have been using it but weren't disclosing it, and that's kind of where the issues and the controversy comes in. That's where it started, I believe.
But for the most part, the kava community, so the kava bar community, it's not just kava, right? It's a lot of kratom as well, is not fond of this stuff because, again, 7-OH is an extremely, extremely adulterated version of kratom. It's taking one tiny, tiny aspect of kratom and it's turning into this completely separate beast. In a separate episode before we use kind of the fruit analogy, I think specifically the banana.
Yeah, we got lots of positive feedback about this.
So think about a banana, right?
Or a potato, like any kind of produce.
Something that ferments, okay? So all fruit's going to have a tiny amount of alcohol in it. But when you go to, the grocery store and you get a banana, you go home and eat that banana, you're not going to get drunk.
Okay? Yeah, you feed bananas to your kids, you mash it up and you give it to babies. You're not afraid that your child is going to be intoxicated.
But if you were to isolate that small, tiny bit of alcohol in a banana and then turn it into 100 proof alcohol and then take multiple shots of that, you would find yourself, first of all, pretty, drunk. But you would find yourself in a much different place than if you were to just eat the banana. And that's how we see kratom, right? Kratom in its natural form as a tea, as a leaf, in capsules, even to some extent, the extracts, right? Most of the extracts just have their michigynin, and it's typically, at reasonable doses. But 7-OH is extremely, extremely potent. People out there compare it to morphine. They say it's more potent than morphine. I don't know, the exact validity to that, but regardless, 7-OH is extremely addicting. It's extremely potent. It's expensive. And for a lot of people out there, when they go to these smoke shops and these gas stations, there's no education behind it, right? The dude at the gas station or the smoke shop is probably not going to be super educated on kratom and then the kratom alkaloids, how 7-OH is different than kratom, the different dosages, how it all affects the body. So right now you have a dilemma where you have tons of people going into these places or even these, call them out like Champs trade shows, right? Where they have all these products out there and they just see it as something new and kind of exciting, not knowing all the detriments that come with taking an extremely addicting substance.
Yeah, and there's a couple things playing off that as well. Another issue that we're seeing is specifically, in the botanical industry is you have really common vendors who are already selling you kratom, who it's a company that you already trusted. You were already taking the kratom products that they were selling, and now all of a sudden they are selling 7-OH. And you look at this company, you already trusted them, you trusted the kratom, and so you assume, okay, well, I'm going to trust this product also. And you assume, if you don't know, well, this is just kratom. This is a kratom company. Why would they be making something so crazy and different? I trust them. I trust their other products. They make me feel good. So I'm going to try this. And you try it once and you're hooked and you're addicted. And that's the problem, is that people aren't being educated about what they are taking, what's actually in the products that they're putting in their body. And then they get hooked and they don't even know it. And so that is a big problem as well, is people are trying to make a buck, and you can't hate a business person who's just trying to make money. And I know it's hard in the botanical space because so many of us care so much. So many kava bar owners and so many company owners care deeply about their customers, but they don't all. And at the end of the day, a company needs to make money, and this is a really easy way for companies to make money. And so that's part of the problem as well.
Yeah, and I can't hate too much because, again, right now it's not legal, it's not scheduled, it's not to the point where companies are going to get themselves in the shit for selling it. So, on one side it's like, yes, I can't hate on you for selling it, but I think there is an ethical side of it when we know how addicting, how potent this stuff is. And I think just overall, because you might be coming here and maybe you've said no H and you're like, hey, for me, I can have, a tablet or two every now and then and be fine. And there are those people out there who can have it in moderation and leave it alone. But what the big issue is, and especially from the botanical community, is the media and lawmakers are seeing kratom and 7-OH as the same thing. So you see the headlines, it's, gas station kratom, kratom causing this, kratom causing that, when really there's a clear delineation between whole leaf kratom, right? When you go to a kava bar and you get kratom tea, or you just get powder or capsules to use at home, versus these, extra potent synthesized 7-OH tablets.
Or even the difference between a kratom seltzer with kratom extract, it's still an extract. One might argue that is not pure, and that's right, but there's still a massive difference between 7-OH and even a kratom extract. And so that's one thing that has been really frustrating throughout all of this, is seeing articles and media just synonymize kratom and 7-OH, and they'll talk about 7-OH, but they'll say kratom. And that's very confusing for the general public. So that's another reason why we're hoping to really get this message out. So, we encourage you, if you are on either side of the fence, really share this to just help educate people. Share this episode. So let's kind of get into it. What is the difference between scheduling and regulating? Because that is huge. And some people are pro regulating, but they aren't pro scheduling. And that is what what is being discussed right now, RFK Jr. and the federal government is encouraging scheduling 7-OH. So the difference is when you regulate something, it's like alcohol, it's like CBD. It is legal. It is just regulated. You have age limits. You have, you can only purchase it in certain amounts, and it's only available in certain, places. You have to be ID checked, and you can't drive with it. Things like that. That's being regulated. So it's legal, but you have, certain rules around it. Now, the difference when something is scheduled, you have a Schedule 1 and a Schedule 2. Schedule 1 is the highest, and that is what they are recommending for 7-OH. And a Schedule 1 means that it is not legal to make or use by any company or any person except in very, very rare scientific studies or health studies. And that is what they're recommending for 7-OH. Now, there's Schedule 2.
Now, I will say, keep in mind with when they schedule this as a Class 1 substance, again, that's stuff like heroin, LSD, so what that will do, and I'm not, I'll say this, I'm not a fan of 7-OH, but at the same time, if you put this as a Class 1 substance, then you're going to start seeing people being literally put behind bars for 7-OH, and I don't think it needs to get to that point.
Yeah, that's a great distinction, is that basically one of the major differences between a Class 1 and Class 2 is jail time. So you will be jailed if you have it, or if you are creating it, you could be jailed. So for a Class 2, that is things like Xanax and Adderall, things that are legal medically, but again, you have restrictions and rules. You typically have to have a prescription, but they're still available. And so we can get into, our opinions, but in my opinion, I do not think 7-OH should be classified as a Schedule 1. I think it should be classified as a Schedule 2 or simply restricted. And that's where, we can talk about the details and you can make up your own opinion, but let's, get into that. So, yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's tough because we talked to a lot of people, right? And the majority of our anecdotal discussions we have is 7-OH has been a detriment to the person's life. But I've also talked to other people where it's just not that big of a deal. Even like with kratom, people still freak out about just kratom as a whole leaf. And there's all this, misinformation out there. There's all this boogeyman type of story. And, I'm someone who uses kratom almost every day at a very, very low dose in powder form. And I have great blood work. I have zero issues. I can take it or leave it. I can go a week without using it, and I don't even think about it, right? So I've talked to people the same with 7-OH, where they can take it every now and then, and they like the effects of it. But the next day, they're like, okay, I can take it or leave it. I don't need it, right? But again, from anecdotal evidence, from the majority of people we talk to, that is, I would say, kind of more the rare case. What seems to happen is people will start using it. And again, this stuff is very, very, very potent, right? And for a lot of people, it feels very, very good. Very effective at reducing pain, very effective at giving you those opioid-like effects. Just the same reason people get addicted to prescription opioids, right? So it's getting up there to kind of that level.
Yeah, and so RFK Jr. was quoted saying that he believes that 7-OH needs to be scheduled as Class 1 because he thinks it will help with the opioid addiction. And I have to disagree. I think if anything, when you get rid of something that is available to someone without a prescription, because you have to understand our medical system, it's not a medical system, it's an insurance system. And there are a lot of people who don't have insurance, or there are a lot of doctors who won't prescribe certain things. So people don't get access to it, or they're prescribed an opioid by their doctor, they get hooked, and then they don't get refills. And that's when they turn to heroin. And so having 7-OH as an option for people like that, I think is preventing them from, maybe I don't want to use the opioid prescription, I'm going to try 7-OH instead. And I don't have a medical condition, I don't have severe pain, but I know people do. And so I do think 7-OH is an option for certain people who have that debilitating, daily, intense pain, and they don't want to be on opioids, or their body reacts better to 7-OH than it does to opioids. And who am I to say that this needs to be taken away from them? And so in my opinion, I don't think it prevents the opioid addiction. If anything, I think it pushes people to opioids, because if they can't get 7-OH, well, then they're going to get a prescription from their doctor for an opioid that the doctor's probably getting kickback for. And then they will run out of refills. And then what are they going to turn to?
And go to the street.
Exactly. Then they'll go to the street. That's when they'll get heroin. Then that's laced with fentanyl. And that's when you have the spiraling effect, because people run out of their prescriptions. And so in my opinion, I think he's being very closed-minded, and it's all nice and joyful to think that we'll close the opioid loop, but all I think is pushing people towards it, in my opinion.
Yeah. And, I kind of been thinking about this one too, because even going back to, we'll call it normal kratom, right? And we're not major extract peoples, but we do like, seltzers and extracts here and there, and was always kind of against them, especially past like 50 milligrams, because I think that's just getting very high. But after talking to people who do have, a lot of pain, and they need something strong, and, downing 10 grams, 20 grams of kratom powder every day, that's a lot, right? Just even for the stomach to digest, and it has its own host of side effects right there. So for someone with, debilitating, holy cow.
It's a tongue twister.
Tongue twister.
Say that 10 times fast.
Hey, I mean, if you guys listen to the show, you know that I like to pronounce words my own way. So
yeah, it's a special Charles flair.
If I ever say something, off, just know, like, hey, that's just Charles talking. But, I've seen why extracts and higher doses help people out, because, again, they don't have to ingest a large amount of powder or capsules. They can just have, 5 milliliters of a extract liquid and get the effects that they need. So I do see the use case with 7-OH. What I don't like, though, is, again, the fact that it is just sold like candy. There's no education behind it, and there's no regulation behind it. And again, it's lumped in with kratom. So now you have companies that just sell kratom, like just a whole leaf. You have kava bars, and the media and other people are out there calling them drug dealers, giving them shit and all this stuff, when in reality, they are trying to do right by the consumer. And a lot of these 7-OH companies are seen too, they're fly by night. They literally pop up, they get a website going, they get a distributor in smoke shops and gas stations, and they come out of nowhere. And when, this gets either regulated or scheduled, they'll be gone, and they'll move on to the next thing to make them money, right? So I don't think there's a lot of intention to do well by the consumer with a lot of these companies putting the 7-OH out. And again, it's very misleading, and in my opinion, unethical to just sell them as it is right now without, some type of regulation in place.
Yeah, and if you kind of think about it like ephedrine, like Primatene. So you can get Primatene over the counter from the pharmacist. You give them your ID, and you're limited to a certain amount a month. And, Primatene is something you can use. We use it for like our asthma, like right now when I'm all congested and I can't breathe. It helps open up my airways, and it helps me, in the gym. So that's something that is legal, but it is, again, it's regulated. There's certain restrictions. I have to give them my ID. The people, the government, they know like exactly how much, I'm getting each month. And if I pass that threshold, they'll scan my ID and they'll be like, oh, sorry, you hit your threshold. You can't have this anymore. And so I do feel like that maybe that's a system that could be used with 7-OH, where it's a very specific dosage. You can't go over a certain dosage. There's a specific threshold. You can't go over a certain amount a month. And this is a federal database. It's not like a store database. It's not like you can hop around from store to store. And that is something that the people who need it can get it for what they need it for. But there's much less likely chance of it being abused. And that's something that I feel like is a much better solution. Like I'm very interested to see if these are solutions and options that the DEA talks about, and if they talk to real experts. And another thing that I'm concerned about is, the dosage of it. What is going to be that threshold that they classify as illegal? Because like Charles said in the beginning, almost all kratom products, if you look on the back, it will say the amount of 7-OH in it. Now it's typically, it'll be like that squiggly line that implies like less than, or it'll have like the less than sign, or it'll say like 0.05 or like 0.001 or whatever. But they are letting you know there's a teeny itty bitty, teeny tiny sliver of it. And I'm just so concerned that whoever is discussing this will see, well, it has 7-OH in it, it's illegal. It can't happen. Not being educated and not understanding that all kratom will have like this teeny tiny itty bitty sliver of it, and not understanding what that means. And that's my biggest fear, is that they will pass this, it will become Schedule 1, and the threshold will not be defined, or will be so low that no kratom product will be able to meet that.
Yeah, and going back to the beginning, when I say that 7-OH is not kratom, I'm sure people out there will be like, oh, well, you just said that.
I'm confused.
7-OH in kratom. Yes, but again, going back to the fruit banana analogy, right? You can't say that, or the potato. Isn't that potato's how you make vodka?
So vodka's potato. So think of potato vodka, think grapes wine. Yes. You know, like you use the same plant, but it's a completely different product.
So if you saw me eating a potato, which I don't know if most people just like go around eating potatoes.
French fries. You saw me eating some French fries.
You wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, look at that asshole sitting there
getting his
vodka sticks,
getting his kid wasted off of potatoes.
Yeah.
Like, no one would ever think that.
So that's what we mean, the fact that they're not the same thing. When you go to a kava bar, or you're at home and you have a kratom tea, and this is what I always recommend too. If it's your first time having kratom, find a kava bar, because most times what they'll do is they'll make it out of the loose leaf, and they'll actually brew it as a tea. It's very gentle in the body. If you don't have a kava bar around you, just get the kratom capsules or powder, and again, just use it in its whole version. And it's, obviously it's not side effect free, right? But if you keep it in low to moderate dosage, you'll be fine. And in fact, the FDA came out with a study with high dose kratom capsules, and these are at dosages that we don't even use. And it said, overall safe, right?
And so I think that right there is a perfect example of how different kratom and 7-OH are. Because if the federal government, the FDA, not government, the FDA comes out and says that high dose kratom is safe, but then at the same time, they're saying they're recommending 7-OH to be a Schedule 1 drug, that shows that they are not the same thing. They are two completely different products.
And also too, specifically in the hearing that was last week, and this was last Wednesday, I believe, or Thursday.
Yeah, so that would be like the end of July like 27th, 25th, I believe.
Yeah, the days just go together.
I know.
But specifically, they said that they're not going after kratom leaf, kratom in its natural version. So that does show education on their part, that they also do. The government sees 7-OH as different than kratom. And again, when you go to these smoke shops or gas stations or wherever they're sold, I would just, if you're going to use the 7-OH, make sure the product has a lab test on there. I know lab tests can be adulterated. Like, I understand that piece. But, I have seen a lot of 7-OH products that do have lab tests on there. So at least make sure that you're getting something that's just not like super sketch looking. Get something that it looks somewhat professional, has a lab test, maybe is under a larger parent brand, because, most likely they'll have better manufacturing practices and processes in place to make sure that, that 7-OH tab you're getting, you're getting 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams, whatever it is.
And this is what I think a lot of people don't understand. I mean, the average person doesn't understand a lot about business, but in general, it's not hard to get a product created. It's not expensive. No. Like, it's not hard or expensive to get a cheap kratom, kava, 7-OH, whatever product you want. It's not hard or expensive to get a cheap, like Charles said, fly-by-night product created. What's expensive is doing the testing, making sure that it's high quality, making sure that it's in a clean manufacturing facility. There's different, and the NSF, National Sanitation, like there's certain all those different regulations, that's what's expensive. So when you're buying a cheap product, it's cheap for a reason. And that's what you need to be aware of. If it doesn't have the testing, it doesn't have the information, this is someone who was like, I just want to make a quick buck. Let me throw this together. They're probably just doing one massive batch, selling as much as they can, and then shutting down before they can get sued and get in trouble, because they don't care. They just want to make the money. So it's really important that you're not always just looking for the cheapest product, but you're really looking for, you're putting this in your body. Like, what is the best thing that I can put in my body? Really educate yourself and, pay a little bit extra to buy from a trusted company.
Yeah, I know. So when it comes to us, typically I have a little bit more empathy than Heidi does. She's a little bit more, I want to say cold-hearted.
I mean, they do. They say that all the time, that I'm cold. I'm not cold-hearted. And I'm working on it. It's something I recognize.
She is working on it.
But I have less understanding for excuses, I think, is my...
Anyway, so...
We can have a whole episode about this.
We should. But going back to, I guess the empathy piece is, especially people who use 7-OH, I don't judge you, and we don't judge you. In fact, a lot of times the blame can't be put onto the consumer in some sense. And inside me screams, though, yes, it should, because you can read a label. You can, we have supercomputers at our hands at all times now. You can Google something, you can chat GPT it to kind of see what exactly that ingredient is. But at the same time, if someone does go to a retail location, if it's out there being sold, most, and this is even from talking to people, most people are like, well, I assume that it's okay then. If it's being sold in the retail spot, brick and mortar, I assume this is okay for me to use. And
we don't have to go down the rabbit hole right now, but that's the issue that we have with our food in America, is because not very many people are starting to wake up and do the research on the food, but they assume this is being sold in a grocery store. It says natural, or it's labeled as healthy. I'm assuming this is okay for me and this is fine, and I'm not going to waste my time doing the research. And that's not true.
Yeah. And, so again, I empathize with people who are hooked on 7-OH right now. And, there is a path to get out of that trap, right? And I do also recognize that there are people out there who utilize 7-OH to help them. Okay. We're not ignorant to the fact that it is helping a lot of people with management of symptoms they have, because again, maybe they don't have insurance, or they just don't have the means, to, constantly see the doctor. Even, I, have prescriptions, right? Through my primary care. And I'll admit, it's a pain in the ass to have to go constantly get re-upped, get on the phone with the doctor again, or go do the visit to get everything to make sure I can continue my prescriptions. So there is a barrier there versus just rolling over to your local smoke shop and being able to get these tablets. And those tablets, for a lot of people, are helping them effectively manage symptoms that are keeping them from living their life. So I understand that piece. I'm also someone who tends to be more, I don't think any drugs should be, class 1, scheduled as class 1s, just because I don't think people should be behind bars for using something. Now, dealers, on the other hand, and people who are instigating this, I see a little bit differently. But for a lot of consumers, they end up just being the victim of what's out there. Their friend might be like, "Oh man, I got these 7-OH shots or tabs. They feel great." Well, for a lot of people, that's well, cool, man. So this is something legal I can go get. Right? It's not alcohol, where it's going to give me a DUI or something like that. For a lot of people, it's not going to show up in a drug test at work. So hell yeah, a lot of people are going to be like, for sure, give it to me. Let me go try them out. So, when something's out there, you can't, put the blame on someone. But I do think this is interesting, because I do think a lot of these companies pushing 7-OH are going to be on watch, and I'll be really curious to see how they backpedal or how they shift, or if they just close up shop and run while they can.
Yeah. And like Charles said, this is an example of a time where I am empathetic. It does happen. Like, it does happen. And like Charles said, I am very empathetic. And the biggest thing that I'm empathetic about is just that our medical system is not a medical system. I can't stress that enough. It is completely controlled by insurance. And this is what happens is, people need help, and they aren't able to get the help they need, whether it's because money, insurance. For example, I need an MRI and insurance won't approve my MRI. Like, insurance controls everything. And for someone to have to waste the time to pay out of pocket, to pay a copay, to go to the doctor, get the prescription, go to the pharmacy, like, people don't have time for that. So they're going to look for ways that they can find it. And that is why I don't support scheduling this, because when you schedule something, all that does is give the power to the government and give the power to the pharmacies, to the big pharmacy, big pharma. And I don't think that they have enough control. They have enough power. I don't think they need to have even more. And I do feel like whenever we find something that is able to help people, including kava and kratom, they're very quick. As soon as they can't make the profit off of it, they're very quick to try and ban it. And so that if they can't make the profit, no one can. And of course, I'm just putting, this is just me speculating, but I am very empathetic to people. So I don't want people to think that, like Charles said, that we judge them. But for us, or for me, in my opinion, I hope that this does not get classified as a Schedule I drug. I would be open to possibly Schedule II, but I think it would be in the best case for the public to be just restricted and to be more kind of like over the counter, something that's over the counter, but you have to be in the database and know who's taking what. I'm very curious to see where this goes though. And I would love for everyone to drop in the comments your opinions, fears you have, things, if you're pro, against it, what you like, what you don't like. And, let's see what the community thinks.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, guys, like, man, this stuff brings up a lot of emotions for a lot of people, but even with us, like, we're just, we're not doctors, guys. We're not experts, and we're we're not members of the FDA, anything, right? We're just seeing the landscape for what it is. We've run this podcast for the past 3 years about kava and kratom herb botanicals. So we've talked to a shit ton of business owners, vendors, kava bar owners, people in the community. So a lot of what we see is kind of ground level. And again, this community is growing. Kratom, kava, cannabis, all that stuff is getting more popular. And then, you got 7-OH out there now and the news everywhere. And for us, again, the biggest thing that kind of pisses us off is it's given our community, the kava kratom community, a bad name, when in reality, they are two separate things. And, it'd just be a shame to see the baby, thrown out the bathwater. But fortunately, it does look like they've kind of, delineated between 7-OH and kratom. So yeah, let's hope for the best. I definitely, want to see the best thing for the consumer, but also to, keep people safe and make sure that they're educated.
All right, guys, drop in the comments what you think, and thank you so much for tuning in.
All right, we'll see y'all next time.
Welcome to Kava and Kettlebells, where we talk about kava, fitness, and life. Let's get kava-fied.